Captain Marcus Whitmore had served the royal house of Alderton for 15 years, and in all that time, he had never questioned an order from the royal family. His loyalty was absolute, his dedication unwavering, and his reputation spotless. The tall, broad-shouldered guard, with steel-gray eyes, had protected 3 generations of royals, earning respect from servants and nobles alike. But on this particular autumn evening, as golden leaves danced outside the palace windows, everything he believed about honor and duty would be tested. The grand corridors of Alderton Palace buzzed with their usual evening activity. Servants hurried between chambers, preparing for the night's royal dinner, while guards maintained their silent vigil at every corner. The palace, with its soaring ceilings and portraits of long-dead kings, felt alive with centuries of history. Marcus walked his regular patrol route, his polished boots clicking against the marble floors, when he noticed something unusual near the Queen Consort's private study. Lady Victoria Ashworth, the Queen Consort and stepmother to the young Princess Isabella, was speaking in hushed but urgent tones with her personal assistant, Elena Blackwood. Marcus had always found Lady Victoria to be cold and calculating, though he kept such thoughts to himself. She had married King Edmund 3 years ago, after the tragic death of the beloved Queen Catherine, Isabella's mother. Since then, tensions in the palace had grown thick as morning fog. Marcus pressed himself against an alcove, not out of habit to eavesdrop, but because something in Lady Victoria's tone made his instincts sharpen. As the kingdom's most trusted guard, he had learned to sense danger from years of protecting the royal family from countless threats. What he heard next made his blood run cold. "The arrangements must be made tonight," Lady Victoria was saying, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to having orders followed without question. "Princess Isabella has become too much of a problem. Her growing popularity with the people threatens everything we've worked for. The nobles are beginning to see her as the rightful heir." "Not my son, Prince Adrian." Elena shifted nervously, glancing around the corridor. "Your Majesty, are you certain about this course of action? The princess is still just a child, barely 14 years old. Surely there are other ways to handle the situation." Lady Victoria's laugh was as sharp as winter wind. "Other ways? The girl grows more like her mother every day. She has Catherine's spirit, her way of winning hearts. Do you think I fought this hard to secure Adrian's position, just to watch it slip away to a sentimental fool? No. Isabella must be removed from the succession, permanently." Marcus felt his hand instinctively move to his sword hilt. Remove Princess Isabella? The young girl who had brought laughter back to the palace halls after her mother's death? The same princess who remembered every servant's name and always asked about their families? His mind raced through the possibilities of what removal might mean, and none of them sat well with his conscience. "What exactly are you proposing, Your Majesty?" Elena asked, though her voice suggested she already suspected the answer. "There will be an accident," Lady Victoria said matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. "Isabella enjoys her morning rides through the eastern woods. The path there can be quite dangerous, especially near the old bridge over Raven's Gorge. Horses can be unpredictable creatures, and accidents happen even to experienced riders. Who could blame a grieving stepmother for such a tragic loss?" The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had taught Princess Isabella to ride that very path when she was 10 years old. She trusted him, looked up to him like the father figure she had lost too young. The thought of anyone harming her, especially in such a calculated way, ignited a fire in his chest that he had never felt before. "And if questions are asked," Elena pressed, "who would question such a thing? The king is still deep in his grief and relies on me for everything. The other guards will investigate, of course, but they'll find exactly what I want them to find. A tragic accident, nothing more. Within a year, Adrian will be officially named heir, and our position will be secure forever." Marcus had heard enough. Every fiber of his being screamed against what he had just learned. This wasn't just about political maneuvering or royal succession. This was about murder. Cold, calculated murder of an innocent girl who had never harmed anyone. The same girl who still left flowers on her mother's grave every Sunday, who read stories to the younger servants' children, who dreamed of making the kingdom a better place when she came of age. His mind immediately began forming a plan. He couldn't simply report this to the king, not without proof that would be believed over the word of his wife. Lady Victoria was clever and would have covered her tracks well. Plus, King Edmund had been a shadow of himself since Queen Catherine's death, often deferring to Victoria's judgment in matters both small and large. No, Marcus would need to be smarter than that. The conversation in the study was winding down, with Victoria giving Elena specific instructions about timing and arrangements. Marcus quickly but silently moved away from his hiding spot, his mind already racing ahead to what he needed to do. First, he had to warn Princess Isabella without raising suspicions. Second, he needed to gather evidence of the plot. And third, he had to find a way to expose Lady Victoria's treachery in a manner that would be impossible to deny or cover up. As he walked back toward the main hall, Marcus caught sight of Princess Isabella herself, descending the grand staircase for dinner. Her auburn hair caught the light from the crystal chandeliers, and her green eyes sparkled with the same warmth her mother had possessed. She moved with the grace of someone born to royalty but without the arrogance that often accompanied such privilege. Seeing her now, innocent and unaware of the danger lurking in her own home, strengthened Marcus's resolve. "Good evening, Captain Whitmore," Isabella said with a genuine smile as she reached the bottom of the stairs. "How was your day?" "Good evening, Your Highness," Marcus replied, bowing slightly while his mind worked furiously behind his calm exterior. "It has been quite eventful, though I hope tomorrow will be more peaceful for all of us." Isabella tilted her head slightly, perhaps picking up on something in his tone. "Is everything all right? You seem troubled." Marcus managed a reassuring smile, though inside he was already formulating how to keep her safe. "Nothing you need to worry about, Princess. Just the usual concerns of keeping everyone in the palace secure. Will you be taking your morning ride tomorrow, as planned?" "Of course," she said brightly. "I love those morning rides through the eastern woods. They're the most peaceful part of my day. Mother used to say that spending time in nature helps clear the mind and strengthen the spirit." "Indeed she did," Marcus agreed, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what awaited her if he failed to act. "Perhaps tomorrow I could accompany you? It's been a while since I've ridden those trails myself." Isabella's face lit up with delight. "That would be wonderful. It's been too long since we've had a chance to talk properly. I've missed our conversations about the kingdom and its people." As they parted ways for dinner, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. He had less than 12 hours to prevent a murder and save the life of the girl who represented the kingdom's hope for a better future. The game had begun, and failure was not an option. That night, as the palace settled into its evening routines and most inhabitants prepared for sleep, Marcus would begin the most important mission of his career, not against external enemies or foreign threats, but against the darkness that had crept into the very heart of the royal family itself. The loyal guard who had never questioned an order was about to become something he never imagined, a rebel fighting to save his kingdom's soul. Sleep eluded Marcus that night as he lay in his modest chamber within the palace's guard quarters, staring at the stone ceiling while his mind worked through every possible scenario. The weight of what he had overheard pressed down on him like a physical burden. By dawn, he had formulated a plan that was risky but necessary, one that would require precise timing and unwavering courage. The first pale light of morning found Marcus already dressed and moving through the palace corridors with purpose. He made his way to the stables, where the morning mist still clung to the cobblestones and the smell of hay and leather filled the air. Princess Isabella's horse, a beautiful chestnut mare named Starlight, was already being prepared for the morning ride by the stable boys. "Thomas," Marcus called to the head groom, a weathered man who had been caring for the royal horses for over 20 years. "I'll need Thunderbolt saddled as well. I'll be accompanying Her Highness this morning." Thomas looked surprised but nodded without question. "Very good, Captain. Though I should mention, there was someone here earlier asking about the princess's usual route. Said they were concerned about the safety of the eastern path after yesterday's rain." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "Who was asking?" "One of the Queen Consort's people. Elena Blackwood, I believe her name was, seemed very interested in the condition of the old bridge over Raven's Gorge. Asked if the princess always took that particular path." This confirmed Marcus's worst fears. The trap was already being set, and he had arrived just in time to prevent it from being sprung. "Thank you, Thomas. Has anyone else shown unusual interest in the princess's riding habits recently?" The old groom scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Now that you mention it, there have been a few questions here and there. Nothing that seemed important at the time, but looking back." He trailed off, clearly troubled by the implications. "Thomas, I need you to listen carefully, Marcus said, lowering his voice and moving closer. Princess Isabella may be in danger. I can't explain everything right now, but I need your help to keep her safe. Can I count on you? The groom's eyes widened, but his expression hardened with determination. Thomas had served the royal family faithfully for decades and had watched Princess Isabella grow from a toddling child into the remarkable young woman she was becoming. Whatever you need, Captain, that girl is precious to us all. If anyone else comes asking about her riding routes or the condition of the paths, you know nothing. And if anything should happen to me today, I need you to take this directly to Sir Geoffrey Hamilton. Marcus handed him a sealed letter he had written during the sleepless night. No one else, do you understand? Only Sir Geoffrey. Sir Geoffrey was the king's oldest friend and most trusted advisor. One of the few people in the court who Marcus knew would act on evidence of treachery, regardless of who was involved. The letter contained everything Marcus had overheard, along with his suspicions about the planned accident. Princess Isabella arrived at the stables as the sun began to climb higher, bringing warmth to chase away the morning chill. She wore a deep blue riding dress that complemented her auburn hair, and her face glowed with the anticipation of the peaceful ride ahead. Marcus felt a stab of protectiveness as he realized how young and trusting she appeared, completely unaware of the danger that surrounded her. Captain Whitmore, how lovely that you can join me today, she said warmly, accepting Thomas's help to mount Starlight. I was hoping we could ride to the meadow beyond the eastern woods. The wildflowers should be beautiful this time of year. Actually, Your Highness, Marcus said carefully as he mounted his own horse, I was thinking we might explore some of the western trails today. I've heard reports of some beautiful autumn colors in that direction, and it's been a while since you've seen that part of the estate. Isabella looked puzzled but agreeable. Of course, if you think it would be better. Though I do love the eastern path, especially the view from the old bridge. It reminds me of the stories Mother used to tell about brave knights and hidden treasures. Marcus's heart clenched at the innocent mention of the very location where Lady Victoria planned to stage the accident. Perhaps we can save the eastern route for another day, he said gently. Today, let's try something different. They set off from the stables, but Marcus noticed immediately that they were not alone. At a discreet distance, two riders followed them, staying just far enough back to avoid being obvious but close enough to keep them in sight. Marcus recognized one of them as Henrik Voss, a guard who had joined the palace staff only 6 months ago, shortly after Lady Victoria's influence had begun to grow stronger. Unlike the other guards who had served for years and earned their positions through merit and loyalty, Henrik had been personally recommended by Lady Victoria herself. Your Highness, Marcus said quietly as they rode. I wonder if you've noticed anything unusual in the palace lately. Any changes in how people treat you, perhaps? Isabella considered this thoughtfully as they entered the tree line of the western woods. Now that you mention it, there have been some odd things. Lady Victoria has been asking me a lot of questions about my plans and preferences. She seems particularly interested in my daily routines, when I ride, where I walk, that sort of thing. I thought she was just trying to be a caring stepmother, but sometimes her questions feel more like an interrogation. And how do you feel about Lady Victoria in general? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. I try to be respectful because Father married her, and I know he cares for her, Isabella said diplomatically. But I've never felt comfortable around her. She looks at me sometimes as if she's trying to solve a problem, and I can't shake the feeling that I am that problem. Her son Adrian is nice enough, but there's always this tension when we're all together, as if everyone is waiting for something to happen. Marcus nodded, impressed by the young princess's perceptiveness. Despite her youth, she had clearly sensed the undercurrents of hostility and ambition that swirled around her stepfamily. Your instincts serve you well, Your Highness. It's important to trust those feelings, especially when your safety might be at stake. Isabella pulled her horse to a stop and turned to look at Marcus directly. Captain, you're frightening me. Is there something specific I should know about? Am I in some kind of danger? Before Marcus could answer, the sound of approaching hoofbeats made both of them turn. Henrik Voss and his companion had closed the distance between them and were now emerging from the trees at a rapid pace. Marcus's hand instinctively moved to his sword as he positioned his horse between the approaching riders and Princess Isabella. Captain Whitmore, Henrik called out as he approached, his voice carrying a false note of concern. The Queen Consort sent us to find you. There's been a change of plans regarding the princess's ride today. She's requested that Her Highness return to the palace immediately for an urgent family matter. Marcus studied Henrik's face carefully, noting the slight tension around his eyes and the way his hand rested near his weapon. "What sort of urgent matter?" he asked evenly. "I'm not privy to the details," Henrik replied, though his companion shifted nervously in his saddle. "I was simply told to escort the princess back safely and immediately." "How did you know where to find us?" Marcus asked. "We changed our usual route this morning." For just a moment, Henrik's composure slipped, and Marcus saw a flash of uncertainty cross his features. We checked the eastern path first, then expanded our search." "Lucky guess, I suppose." But Marcus had noticed something else that confirmed his suspicions. Henrik's horse was breathing hard, as if it had been ridden at speed for some distance. If they had really been searching multiple paths randomly, the horse wouldn't show such signs of exertion. No, they had been following specific instructions, likely from Elena Blackwood or Lady Victoria herself, to intercept the princess and direct her toward the dangerous eastern route where the accident could still be staged. "Thank you for the message," Marcus said politely, though his muscles remained tense and ready for action. "However, I believe I'll escort the princess back to the palace myself. There's no need for additional guards." Henrik's expression darkened slightly. "I'm afraid I must insist, Captain." The Queen Consort was very specific about her instructions. "The princess is to be brought back immediately, and I am to personally ensure her safe arrival." Princess Isabella, who had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm, finally spoke up. "Gentlemen, I appreciate everyone's concern for my safety, but I'm perfectly capable of deciding when to return to the palace. If there's truly an urgent matter, I'd like to hear about it from Lady Victoria herself." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Henrik's companion said, speaking for the first time. Marcus didn't recognize him, which was unusual since he knew every guard who had served at the palace for more than a few weeks. "The situation requires immediate action." It was then that Marcus noticed both men had slowly maneuvered their horses to create a barrier between Princess Isabella and the path back to the palace. They weren't here to escort her home safely. They were here to force her onto the dangerous eastern route where Lady Victoria's plan could still be carried out. The realization that he was outnumbered but couldn't back down crystallized Marcus's resolve. Everything he had sworn to protect, everything he believed in, came down to this moment in the woods where loyalty would be tested and courage would be measured not in grand gestures, but in the simple act of refusing to let evil triumph over innocence. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath as the four riders faced each other in the dappled morning sunlight. Marcus could feel the weight of the moment settling over them like a heavy cloak. Everything he had worked for, every oath he had sworn, every principle he held dear, came down to the next few minutes. "Princess Isabella," Marcus said quietly, never taking his eyes off Henrik and his companion, "I need you to trust me completely. When I give the signal, I want you to ride as fast as you can back toward the palace. Don't stop for anything or anyone until you reach Sir Geoffrey Hamilton. Can you do that?" "Captain, I don't understand what's happening," Isabella whispered. But Marcus could hear the steel in her voice that reminded him so much of her mother. "Why are these men really here?" "Because someone very close to you wants you dead," Marcus said simply, deciding that the truth, however harsh, was what she needed to hear. "And I swore an oath to protect the royal family, even if that means protecting you from other members of that family." Henrik's hand moved closer to his sword. "Captain Whitmore, you're making this much more difficult than it needs to be. Stand aside and let us escort the princess where she needs to go." "And where exactly is that?" Marcus challenged, drawing his sword in one smooth motion. The steel sang as it cleared the scabbard, and his horse, trained for combat, immediately shifted into a ready stance. "To the eastern path, where an unfortunate accident has been carefully planned. To the old bridge over Raven's Gorge, where the princess's horse will mysteriously lose its footing." The color drained from Henrik's face, confirming what Marcus had suspected. These men knew exactly what they had been sent to accomplish, and it wasn't rescuing Princess Isabella from danger, it was delivering her to it. "I don't know what you think you heard," Henrik said, but his voice lacked conviction as he drew his own weapon. "But you're interfering with direct orders from the Queen Consort." "The Queen Consort," Marcus said with bitter emphasis, "has no authority to order the murder of a princess, but you're about to learn that some orders should never be followed, regardless of who gives them." Princess Isabella's horse danced nervously as the tension in the clearing reached a breaking point. She had gone pale but remained in her saddle with admirable composure. "Captain Whitmore, what you're suggesting about Lady Victoria? It's treason to even speak such words, and yet they're true," Marcus replied, keeping his sword raised as Henrik and his companion began to circle them. Sometimes the greatest loyalty requires the greatest betrayal. Sometimes protecting the crown means defying those who wear it. Without warning, Henrik spurred his horse forward, raising his sword to strike. Marcus had expected this, and was ready. Their blades met with a ringing crash that echoed through the trees, sending birds scattering from the branches above. Marcus's years of experience immediately showed as he turned Henrik's attack aside and countered with a swift thrust that would have ended the fight if Henrik hadn't pulled back just in time. "Now, Princess!" Marcus shouted as he engaged Henrik in earnest combat. "Ride," but Princess Isabella couldn't move. The second rider had positioned himself to block her escape route, and was now advancing toward her with clear, malicious intent. Marcus realized with growing horror that he couldn't defend both himself and the princess against two attackers. The situation was rapidly spiraling beyond his control. Just as hope began to fade, the thundering of many hooves announced the arrival of new players in this deadly game. Sir Geoffrey Hamilton burst into the clearing at the head of 6 palace guards, their weapons already drawn and their faces grim with purpose. Thomas the groom had delivered Marcus's letter, and Sir Geoffrey had acted with the decisive speed that had made him the king's most trusted advisor. "Stand down immediately," Sir Geoffrey commanded in a voice that had been obeyed on battlefields across the kingdom. "By order of His Majesty the King, you are all under arrest for conspiracy against the crown." Henrik's companion immediately threw down his sword and raised his hands, clearly not prepared to die for Lady Victoria's schemes when faced with overwhelming odds. But Henrik himself, perhaps realizing that capture meant exposure of the entire plot, made a desperate decision. Instead of surrendering, he wheeled his horse toward Princess Isabella, clearly intending to complete his mission even if it cost him his life. Marcus reacted with lightning speed, spurring his own horse to intercept Henrik's charge. The two guards collided in a thunderous crash that sent both men tumbling from their saddles to the forest floor. Marcus rolled as he hit the ground, coming up with his sword still in hand. But Henrik was faster than expected. He lunged forward with a wild slash that caught Marcus across the ribs, sending a line of fire through his side. Princess Isabella screamed as she saw Marcus stagger, blood beginning to seep through his uniform. But Marcus had faced worse wounds in service to the crown, and pain only sharpened his focus. As Henrik raised his sword for what he hoped would be a killing blow, Marcus feinted left, then drove his blade up and forward in a move that had been drilled into him through years of training. Henrik's eyes widened in shock as he looked down at the steel protruding from his chest. He tried to speak, perhaps to confess or curse or plead, but only blood emerged from his lips. He crumpled to the forest floor as Marcus pulled his sword free. The threat finally ended. Sir Geoffrey's men quickly secured Henrik's companion, who was babbling about following orders and not knowing the full scope of the plan. Princess Isabella dismounted and ran to Marcus's side, her hands shaking as she examined his wound. "You're hurt," she said, her voice thick with concern and tears she was trying not to shed. "You could have been killed. Why did you risk everything for me?" Marcus managed a weak smile as Sir Geoffrey approached to help bind his wound. "Because, Your Highness, some things are worth dying for. The future of this kingdom is one of them, and you are that future." Sir Geoffrey's expression was grave as he looked from the bodies on the ground to the trembling princess. "Marcus, your letter contained serious accusations against the Queen Consort. If what you've written is true, we're dealing with treason of the highest order." "It's all true," Marcus said, wincing as Geoffrey tightened the makeshift bandage. "I overheard her planning this myself. She wants Princess Isabella dead so that her son Adrian can inherit the throne without challenge. This was supposed to look like a riding accident, but she's not going to stop here. There will be other attempts. Then we need to act quickly," Sir Geoffrey decided. "The king must be informed immediately, and Lady Victoria must be arrested before she can flee or cover her tracks. Princess Isabella, are you strong enough to return to the palace and face what's coming?" Isabella straightened her shoulders, and in that moment, Marcus saw not the frightened girl who had ridden out that morning, but the future queen she was destined to become. "I'm ready, Sir Geoffrey. My mother always told me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of fear." If Lady Victoria thinks she can murder her way to power, she's about to learn that the House of Alderton doesn't yield to threats. As they prepared to return to the palace, Marcus felt a deep satisfaction despite his pain. He had kept his oath, protected his princess, and preserved the rightful line of succession. But more than that, he had witnessed the moment when Princess Isabella truly came into her own, when she transformed from a sheltered royal child into the strong leader the kingdom needed. The ride back to the palace was swift and tense. Sir Geoffrey sent riders ahead to secure Lady Victoria and prevent her from fleeing, while Marcus rode beside Princess Isabella, still protective despite his injuries. As they approached the palace walls, they could see activity in the courtyard that suggested word of the morning's events had already spread. King Edmund himself stood on the palace steps, his face a mask of grief and rage as he realized how close he had come to losing his only daughter to the woman he had trusted with his heart. Lady Victoria was already in chains, her carefully constructed facade finally cracked to reveal the ambitious schemer beneath. In the days that followed, the full extent of Lady Victoria's conspiracy was revealed. Elena Blackwood confessed to everything in exchange for leniency, detailing months of planning and preparation for what was meant to be the perfect murder. Prince Adrian, to his credit, denounced his mother's actions and pledged loyalty to his half-sister's rightful claim to the throne. Marcus recovered from his wounds to find himself elevated to the position of Captain of the Royal Guard, a role that recognized not just his skill with a sword, but his unwavering moral compass when faced with an impossible choice. Princess Isabella insisted on visiting him daily during his recovery, and their friendship deepened into something that would sustain them both through the challenges ahead. Years later, when Princess Isabella was crowned queen, she would often speak of the morning in the forest when she learned that true loyalty sometimes means standing against authority, that real courage is found in doing what's right regardless of the cost, and that the greatest protectors are those who guard not just our bodies, but our principles and our souls. Marcus remained by her side throughout her reign, a constant reminder that honor and duty are not always the same thing, and that sometimes the most heroic act is simply refusing to follow an order that would betray everything you believe in. The kingdom prospered under Queen Isabella's wise and compassionate rule, but those who knew the full story understood that it all began with a loyal guard who chose conscience over compliance, in a moment when everything hung in the balance.